G'day. Trooper Cody and Steve on a wet and windy day. We're going to tell you a sex scandal story. So it all starts, perhaps what we'll start with is the 1956 Olympics. And in the 1956 Olympics in Helsinki, the Australian athletes were coming out, and when they were coming out, Waltzing Matilda was playing. That was because the officials at the time in the 50s thought Waltzing Matilda was Australia's national anthem. We actually had a referendum a little while back because we were going to choose our own national anthem. What came second in the competition was Waltzing Matilda. Waltzing Matilda, written by Banjo Paterson, 1895, and I've already made 2 videos about Waltzing Matilda. One is when I'm out riding, singing it, and the other one is why it can't be our national anthem, because Waltzing Matilda is the story of an unemployed homeless man who steals a sheep and then commits suicide. How could that be a national anthem? Did you think that's bad enough? Well, there's even more controversy, I suppose. Come on, mate, move forward. I know it's windy and it's wet. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. That's it, you've got to be in the shot. No good if you're not in the shot, big fella. So the sex and scandal that hardly anybody in Australia knows, because it's all tried to be covered up, is, have you ever gone searching to find out how it was made, how the song came about in 1895? So in 1895, Banjo Paterson had been engaged for 7 years to a woman of a very wealthy, prominent socialite family called Sarah Riley, and engaged for 7 years, not been married, but at that time Banjo Paterson was a tall, handsome, dashing man about town, well known for his poetry. He was a fantastic horse rider, he was a brilliant polo player, and the ladies loved him, and he was a real man about town. But he hadn't married attractive Sarah Riley, been engaged for 7 years. A friend of Sarah Riley's was Christina McPherson, another young lady, and she came from the McPherson family, very, very wealthy as well. And the brothers, the McPherson brothers, Christina's brothers, they ran an enormous station in Queensland in a place called Winton. So what happened is, 1895, Sarah Riley's in Melbourne with her friend Christina McPherson in Melbourne, engaged to Banjo, who lives in Sydney, and the 3 of them get invited to a gathering at Winton, at the station. Very wealthy, upmarket. So they got 3 of them go there. Now while they're there, sitting around the table, one of the brothers, McPherson brothers, tells the story about this one time where he feels a bit bad because he was out riding and he came across a riverbank and he came across a slaughtered sheep that had clearly been slaughtered, and there's a fire and someone had been eating it, and he saw the swagman or the hobo that had been eating this sheep, and as he saw him, the guy jumped into the river to try and escape, and as he was swimming, he went under and he drowned. So there's a sad story of someone who, yes, they'd taken a sheep illegally, but unfortunately in trying to escape, they drowned. So Banjo heard that story at that dinner party. Now these facts are in diaries and letters of Sarah and her descendants, Joanna and her descendants. So what happens a bit further on in this stay when these people are together is they sit down for dinner, and one of the McPherson brothers asks the station manager, not just the manager, not the owner, but he's invited, like the captain of a ship invites plebs to sit at the captain's table on a cruise. The manager was invited to dinner this night, and one of the brothers says to the manager, anything to report from today around the station? And the manager says, no, pretty quiet day, but I did see a swag man out waltzing his Matilda. Now what he meant by that, swag man out carrying all his possessions in his swag rolled up on his back. And when Banjo was sitting at the table, heard that, he said, out waltzing his Matilda, a swag man waltzing his Matilda. And he said it a few times. And as he was saying, a swag man waltzing his Matilda, Christina McPherson starts humming a tune. And Banjo says to her, what's that tune? And she says, I was at the Warrnambool races recently. There was a band there and they played this Scottish tune, a little Scottish, I can't remember what it was called, but here is what it is. And so she then starts humming this tune. And as they're sitting at the table, Christina humming a tune, Banjo saying, waltzing Matilda, a swag man out waltzing his Matilda. There was a harpsichord at the station, and Christina starts knocking out a bit of a tune, and Banjo sits down and started writing a few lyrics, and she started writing the music, and they'd come up with Waltzing Matilda. And a few other, all the McPherson brothers and the other people that are there, they look at the words and they hear the tune, and they all start singing Waltzing Matilda, and they go to a local pub, and everyone in the pub starts singing Waltzing Matilda, and so it's sort of now become a generated thing. Well, where's the sex and scandal in this story? Okay, quick recap. Banjo is engaged to Sarah Riley. Sarah Riley is a friend of Christina McPherson. The three of them have gone together to the McPherson property in Winton, Queensland, and suddenly there's an explosion of emotion. Nobody knows what really happened. Banjo leaves by himself back to Sydney. Christina leaves by herself back to Melbourne. Sarah Riley leaves, goes to the UK. She breaks off her engagement. You don't want to hear the story, just keep backing up and backing up. She breaks off the 7-year engagement, she breaks off with Banjo. Nobody ever talks about what happened, why this happened. There's no records of this in the social papers about what actually happened. It's known the three of them went there. The document still exists where Christina wrote the music and they wrote the words that Banjo created. That all still exists from 1895, except the three of them from there went their separate ways, even to the point that it seems like Christina was expelled from her own family property. Whatever happened in the future? Now, being an old retired copper, coppers are always extremely suspicious. So there's a rumour that, a myth or whatever you want to call it, that Banjo Paterson had an affair of some sort with Christina. But Sarah Riley went to England with a companion, female companion. Her and that female companion, many years later, came back to Melbourne, and her and that female companion lived together in Melbourne until the two of them died in their old age. They were wealthy, social people, remember. They had a huge amount to do with charity, and they're fondly remembered for all that they did for charity. But they were two females, not related, that lived together until the pair of them died, never ever associated with another man. Christina went back to Melbourne, and she never had any associations with men ever. Not engaged, not married, stayed a spinster all her life until she died. Now, you could say that the two girls, Sarah and Joanna, were so upset at splitting up from Banjo or whatever happened that they never wanted anything to do with men, and there's nothing above board. It's all quite above board. But the other side of the coin is that was the big bust up, the 7-year engagement, never actually got married, was the big bust up more to do with, and here I struggle for words, that Sarah and Christina actually weren't interested in men at all, and that the whole kerfuffle in 1895 was more to do with mincing words here. So frightened of how to describe this, they were actually gay. Because Banjo meets the love of his life not that long after, marries her, has children, has grandchildren, and the two of them stay together until the day they die. Was the 7-year convenience that the 7-year engagement that Banjo had with Sarah Riley more a convenience thing, with an understanding? She lived in Melbourne, he lived in Sydney. No one was suspicious about her sexuality because she was engaged. We will never know until they invent a time machine, maybe. Long story. Bet you hadn't heard it before. Cheers. Till next time.